Have you ever asked yourself why it is so difficult to ignore that notification, even when you promised you would finally focus? It almost feels absurd. You sit at your desk, soft morning light through the window, a warm cup of coffee beside you, clear intention to concentrate. And yet, the phone buzzes, a tab glows, and before you realize, your mind drifts off. The truth is that this is not simply my distraction problem, my lack of willpower. It is something deeper. Your brain is running ancient code, written over millions of years to seek reward, novelty, and anticipation. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman from Stanford University explains that dopamine does not just reward what you achieve. It rewards the path your brain perceives you are taking toward reward. When you give in to the impulse to distract, you are not lazy. You are responding to a system that thinks it is doing the safest thing, chasing quick relief instead of maintaining prolonged focus. And the paradox is this: what seems like rest, scrolling without purpose, clicking without intention, actually keeps you suspended in a loop of anticipation that never resolves. In this video, we will explore how that system operates, how your brain owns you through reward, why distraction feels easier than focus, and how you can reclaim agency, not through willpower, but through understanding. Let us step into that signal together and see what it has been trying to tell you. If any part of this already resonated with you, if somewhere inside you thought, "This is me," I am truly glad you are here now. If you feel called, please subscribe to the channel so we can walk together in this exploration of mind, attention, and learning. And if you feel moved, type "I understand" in the comments as a quiet affirmation that you are listening to your own brain. Thank you for being present. Distraction often seems like something external, a force coming from outside that steals your attention and scatters your focus. Yet the truth is far more intimate. The machinery of distraction does not live in the phone or laptop. It lives inside your reward circuitry, in the same dopamine-driven loops that once kept our ancestors alive. Andrew Huberman calls this the brain's reward pathway, designed less for sustained focus and more for movement toward stimulation. Picture a subtle tension, mild boredom, low energy, mental fatigue, that little whisper in your mind saying, "Maybe something else." Your brain reads this as a signal. The stability of your system is at risk. It reaches for relief. And the fastest relief available is novelty. Novelty triggers dopamine release. Dopamine signals potential reward. So when your attention shifts to a notification, a random video, or a sudden thought, your brain is simply following an ancient instruction. Seek stimulation, reduce discomfort, survive. This loop is not moral. It is mechanical. The surprising part is that the dopamine surge is stronger in the anticipation of the reward than in the actual reward itself. That means the moment before you open the distracting tab is chemically more powerful than the moment after. You are neurologically optimized to chase the possibility of feeling better, not the experience of feeling better. This is why distraction can feel irresistible even when you know it will leave you hollow. In our digital lives, this loop is purposefully hijacked. Apps and platforms are designed to exploit the anticipation spike. They do not need to deliver true joy. They only need to foster the expectation of joy. And by doing that, your brain stays in a constant state of seeking, always leaning forward, never grounded. You might believe you are choosing the distraction, but more often the loop is choosing you. And yet, this isn't about weakness. It is about overload. Cognitive fatigue reduces your capacity to resist dopamine cues, making distraction feel like the safest route. The reward loop activates not because you are lazy, but because your nervous system is tired. Your brain rewards distraction because distraction masquerades as rest, even when it is not restful. When you see this, shame begins to lift. You begin to regard distraction not as self-sabotage, but as a message that says, something inside needs rest. And recognizing this changes everything, because instead of battling against distraction, you start listening to it. You start attending to what it really means. Not to excuse procrastination, but to recalibrate how you handle attention, focus, boredom, and stimulation. And in that listening begins the second movement, where you meet the version of yourself that is trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. There is a moment, usually quiet and almost invisible, when you feel yourself split. One part of you wants to stay present. It wants to continue the task, hold the intention, remain inside the steady rhythm of focus. But another part of you rises like a soft shadow, suggesting something easier, lighter, more instantly rewarding. This inner division is one of the most human experiences we share, yet we often treat it like a personal flaw. Andrew Huberman describes how the prefrontal cortex, the seat of deliberate action, constantly negotiates with deeper, evolutionarily older circuits that respond to stress, novelty, and rapid relief. When the negotiation becomes uneven, the older circuit wins, and distraction becomes the path of least resistance. If you pay attention, this hidden dialogue feels almost like talking to a second self. The first self is the one you intended to be this morning. Calm, organized, committed, ready. The second self is the one who wants to preserve comfort, avoid tension, and shield you from cognitive strain. Neither is wrong, neither is broken. They simply operate with different priorities. The mistake is believing that the second self is your enemy. It is not. It is a guardian that learned its job in childhood, when discomfort felt overwhelming and safety came from quick relief. That pattern does not disappear as you grow. It becomes quieter, more sophisticated, but still alive beneath the surface. This second self does not speak in sentences. It speaks in impulses, micro-urges, tiny shifts in attention. It nudges your hand toward the phone. It suggests just one quick look. It tells you the discomfort of staying where you are is too heavy, and because its voice arrives faster than conscious thought, you assume it is your voice. You assume the distraction is your decision. But Huberman points out that much of what we experience as choice is actually the byproduct of competing neural circuits, each bidding for control of your behavior. What feels like inconsistency is often just the faster circuit winning. And this creates the quiet ache many people carry, the sense that they are two people living inside one body, one reaching forward, the other pulling back. But what if this pull is not sabotage? What if it is communication? The second self appears most strongly when your cognitive load is high, your dopamine baseline is low, or your mental energy is stretched thin. It emerges because it does not trust that you have the resources to continue. It tries to protect you from the weight of effort by offering escape disguised as choice. When you understand this, something softens. The internal fight loses its sharpness. You begin to see distraction not as a lack of discipline, but as a protective reflex. And when a reflex becomes visible, it also becomes negotiable. You can meet this second self with awareness, not resistance. You can learn its language, its warnings, its needs. And in learning them, you begin to shift the balance between impulse and intention. This shift carries us directly into the heart of the mechanism behind it, the chemistry that misguides your motivation long before you even notice the impulse rising. The deeper you look into this tension between intention and impulse, the more you realize that the conflict is not personal, it is chemical. Andrew Huberman often explains that dopamine is not the molecule of pleasure, as people like to believe. It is the molecule of pursuit. It is the signal that says, move toward that. Your brain releases dopamine not when you receive a reward, but when you anticipate one. And this is where everything becomes distorted. Because the modern world offers endless micro-rewards, each one designed to trigger anticipation without delivering true satisfaction. The result is a constant misdirection of your motivational system. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path leads to meaningful work, deep focus, sustained thinking, and long-term gratification. The other leads to a rapid surge of anticipation, a tiny spike of excitement, a momentary sense of possibility. Your brain, under normal conditions, can choose the first path. But when your dopamine baseline is low, which happens with stress, overstimulation, lack of sleep, or repeated novelty, your brain becomes increasingly biased toward the easier path. Not because it wants distraction, but because it is trying to restore balance. Huberman describes this as the seesaw effect. The more dopamine spikes you chase, the lower the baseline drops, and the more the system craves immediate stimulation. This is why focusing feels harder after scrolling. It is why your mind wanders faster after multitasking. It is why even simple tasks feel heavier after you have overloaded your attention with rapid novelty. The mind is not tired from effort. It is tired from anticipation. Each small spike of dopamine creates a micro crash that leaves your system depleted, and in that depleted state, the brain becomes vulnerable to any cue that promises quick relief. This misdirection effect makes distraction feel like the logical choice. The brain tries to conserve energy by chasing the fastest route to dopamine, even when that route leads to emptiness. It is not wrong, it is misinformed. It is using an ancient navigation system inside a modern environment overflowing with artificial signals. And because anticipation is stronger than reward, the system keeps leaning forward, always expecting something, never settling into presence. This is why your attention feels fragmented. This is why your motivation feels inconsistent. This is why your intentions feel fragile. You are not fighting laziness. You are fighting a miscalibrated reward system. The brain is doing what it evolved to do: seek, predict, move. But the signals around you are louder, faster, and more frequent than anything it was designed to handle. Once you understand this, the guilt begins to fade. You realize your brain is not failing you. It is following the chemistry it knows. And chemistry can be reshaped. Patterns can be rewritten. The reward system can be retrained to stop chasing the smallest spark and return to the deeper flame. That shift begins with something subtle and powerful: understanding the invisible contract you have been living under, and how to rewrite it gently, without force, without shame, without war against yourself. The moment you realize that your reward system is misdirected, something small shifts inside you. It is not a breakthrough. It is more like a quiet permission to stop fighting yourself. Because every act of distraction, every lapse in focus, every moment you drift away from your intentions, is part of an invisible contract your mind has been trying to honor. The contract says, "I will protect you from strain. I will guide you toward relief. I will prioritize comfort when your energy feels low." This contract was written long before you understood motivation, goals, or discipline. It was written during childhood, reinforced by stress, shaped by experience, and strengthened by every moment your brain felt overwhelmed. Andrew Huberman explains that the brain always chooses the path of least resistance, unless conditions are deliberately arranged to support sustained effort. The contract is the brain's attempt to keep you safe. To rewrite this contract, you do not break it. You revise it. You begin by acknowledging that your brain is not the enemy. It is a system responding to signals. If the signals stay the same, the behavior stays the same. But when you create new signals, gentle, consistent, repetitive, you give the reward system new directions to follow. The first shift is reducing friction. Focus does not require force. It requires fewer competing cues. When you remove visual clutter, silence notifications, or limit the number of open tabs, you are not being productive. You are lowering the threshold your brain must cross to stay grounded. The second shift is restoring your dopamine baseline with intentional recovery. Huberman often emphasizes how non-sleep deep rest, breathing practices, and low-stimulation breaks replenish the system far more effectively than scrolling ever could. When the baseline rises, the brain stops grasping for micro-rewards. It becomes capable of choosing long-term engagement again. This is not discipline. It is chemistry aligned with intention. The third shift is creating rituals of entry, small, predictable cues that tell your brain, we are beginning now. A warm drink, a particular song, a consistent place in the room. These signals become anchors, calming the second self that fears effort. They tell your nervous system that the task is safe, contained, and supported. Over time, these rituals become reward cues in themselves. The anticipation moves away from distraction and back toward focus. The final shift is removing shame from the process. Shame tightens the nervous system. It increases stress, lowers dopamine, and pushes the brain deeper into the protective reflex that fuels distraction. When you remove shame, the system relaxes. The contract becomes easier to renegotiate. You start to see yourself not as someone who fails, but as someone who is recalibrating. And in this recalibration, relief begins to appear, not as victory, but as quiet spaciousness. A soft sense that your mind does not have to fight itself to move forward, that the contract can be rewritten gently, without pressure or urgency, and that this gentleness opens the doorway to something deeper than focus, a return to the part of you that has been waiting under the noise. And that return leads directly into the final movement of this story. There is a moment, often quiet and almost weightless, when the mind begins to settle after wandering for so long. It feels like stepping into a room you forgot you owned. The noise fades, the urgency loosens. You find yourself breathing a little deeper, as if your body is remembering something your mind had abandoned. The feeling of being here. This is not discipline. This is not productivity. This is the nervous system coming home. Andrew Huberman often emphasizes that the brain is fundamentally plastic, always capable of reshaping itself through repeated states. When you learn to guide your mind back to presence gently, without punishment, you teach your circuits that focus is not a threat, but a safe return. This return does not arrive through force. It arrives through softness. You begin noticing the simple things, the warmth of the room, the texture of the table, the rhythm of your breathing. These small sensory anchors activate networks that calm the amygdala and restore the prefrontal cortex's ability to steer attention. Your brain learns that you do not need intensity to feel alive. You only need awareness. The second self, the one that once pulled you toward distraction, starts to relax because it no longer feels responsible for keeping you safe. The body takes over. The environment supports you. The need to escape dissolves. In this state, motivation feels different. It is no longer a push from behind, but a quiet pull from within. You no longer chase the next hit of anticipation because your baseline is no longer collapsed. The nervous system steadies itself. Dopamine stops swinging wildly between spikes and crashes. The reward shifts from novelty to clarity, from stimulation to presence. This is the moment when the loop finally loosens, not because you broke it, but because you stopped feeding it. Relief emerges, not dramatically, but steadily, like the slow clearing of fog after rain. And as this fog lifts, a subtle kind of serenity appears. It is not the serenity of perfection or control. It is the serenity of understanding. You begin to see that the mind was never your opponent. It was a messenger. Every distraction, every impulse, every drift away from the task was your brain saying, I am tired, I am overstimulated, I need balance. And now, having listened, really listened, you offer the balance it was asking for, not as a technique, not as a strategy, but as a relationship. This is the gentle return to yourself, not a victory, but a reunion, a moment of remembering that you are allowed to move slowly. That attention is something you nurture, not something you demand. That learning, motivation, and focus grow in quiet soil, not in battlefields. And if some part of this journey resonated with you, if you felt even a small shift inside your chest while listening, you may share a simple comment. I am returning. A reminder that the path back to yourself is always open and always patient. If you reached this point, I want to say something simple and sincere. Thank you for staying with me. Videos like this are not background noise. They are quiet spaces we choose because something inside us is searching for understanding, not stimulation. And if this journey touched you, even in a small way, I would be honored if you subscribe to the channel. It helps this community grow, but more importantly, it reminds you to return to the places that make you feel grounded. If you felt something, if a line stayed with you, if a part of your mind softened for a moment, you can write, "I receive," in the comments. It is a way of marking that you are open to seeing yourself more clearly. And if you wish to keep going, there is another video waiting for you. A continuation of this same gentle exploration of the mind, the self, and the psychology behind why we do what we do. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for understanding yourself a little more today.